Welcome, I'm Julia Child. We're going to have a great onion soup supper today. It's going to be French onion soup gratiné, and then an unusual and delicious tossed salad. Onion soup really is a very simple, a very peasant-y kind of dish. It's just a whole bunch of onions that are cooked and browned very slowly, and then simmered in a very good beef stock. And of course you can buy onion soup. Here's canned onion soup, which I find really remarkably good. And if you're going to gratinate and put a lot of wine and other things in, you'd hardly know it was canned. And then of course you can buy the dehydrated soup that comes in a little package, and you just simmer it with water. And I think that is really unusually good too. But if you want it to be a completely homemade onion soup, you've got to not only cook all the onions yourself, but you have to cook yourself up a very good beef stock. Because if you cooked up your onions and used canned beef bouillon with it, then it would just taste like canned soup, and you might just as well buy canned soup anyway. So if you're going to make a real homemade soup, you cook your own onions and you cook your own beef stock. And the beef stock, though it takes a little while to do, is a very, very simple and elemental thing that all of us should do a lot more, because all it is bones. And if you can get some bones with a little bit of meat on them, all the better. It'll give you more taste. And here's a beef shank, and you can, when that meat is cooked, you can take it off and eat it and keep on cooking the soup. And this is a collection of partial beef bones and some veal bones, and then we have chopped vegetables. There's chopped onion and roughly chopped carrots. Those are called aromatic vegetables. And you want to brown them in the oven, so you put them in a very hot oven and let them bake for 30 or 40 minutes, turn them, and then baste them with the juices they've rendered, and you end up with your browned bones and meat that you're going to use for the stock. And you notice in there's a lot of dark coagulated meat juices, and all of that is part of the flavor you're going to get from the brown bones. And then you just take all that bones, dump them into a big pot like this, and that brown stuff you gather up with some water, put that in the big pot, and then cover it with about 3 inches of water, and add some herbs like bay and thyme and some garlic tied up in cheesecloth. And then you just simmer it. And you simmer it and simmer it and simmer it, and there you are, all having simmered away. And it takes 4, 5, 6, 7 hours, but you don't have to look at it at all. You partially cover it, and it just simmers away. And then when you feel you've gotten all the good out of your bones, you strain it and degrease it, and you end up with your own beautiful homemade beef stock. And it does make a great deal of difference in the taste of your soup, because it tastes like you and not like the can. And then, besides the beef stock, of course, you have to have sliced onions. And I'm going to make 2 cups of soup, so I need 6 cups of sliced onions. And these can just be ordinary onions, and they don't have to be terribly thinly sliced. But still, 6 cups is quite a bit. And you can use one of these food processors, which are now become part of almost every kitchen. Like that. That makes it very easy indeed. Or you can have a French status symbol, which is known as the mandolin. It all folds up and then unfolds onto a stand, and it has underneath all kinds of wheels and gadgets so that you can make shoestring potatoes and so forth. And it has a little blade up here, and it's very easy for slicing onions. You just go boom, boom, like that, and they slice very easily indeed. This is a very expensive status symbol. It costs more than some of the food processors around, but you'll probably feel very chic owning it. Now this is a very cute little, just tiny unstatus type of slicer, which we call the Rosie slicer. And it has a little thing here that you lay your onion or potato on. There's the blade, and you just go fling, 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 fling. That works very nicely. And then you have just hand work, and I think it's very good to practice by hand take your onion and cut it in half. Cut 2 or 3 slices off the end, and then just holding your hand there, go boom, 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 boom. But I think with all the machines around, sometimes we can forget that you've got to do things by hand, or you'll forget how to do them when the electricity goes off. But however you slice them, you want to end up with 6 cups of sliced onions. And of course, you may cry a little bit doing it. And there's a whole lot of theories on what are the best ways to slice and peel onions without crying. And I did a column for a monthly magazine, and for months we had letters back and forth from readers on the best ways not to cry while doing onions. And I have 19 different ways, and everyone disagrees, but I thought I'd read a few of them to you. One is to hold your breath while you're slicing, and then you're not breathing in the onion vapors. And then some people say, hold your mouth open while you're slicing. Other people firmly say, hold your mouth closed. And then a very nice suggestion is, slice the onions by candlelight, and the candle burns off the vapors as they rise from the onions. And another one is, hold a match between your teeth. It's flint end out, and that will completely prevent any vapors. But I think the one that sounds the very best is, either wear a diving mask or swimming goggles. And as my correspondent said, it looks funny, but it really works. But anyway, however you do it, you need 6 cups of onions, and there they are. And they now need cooking. And you want to cook these very slowly in 3 tablespoons of butter and 1 tablespoon of oil. And then after they've softened, and this is going to take you 40 or 50 minutes to do it just right, after they've softened, put in ½ a teaspoon of sugar. I did it the other day not adding the sugar, and I found that I had to add the sugar because the sugar caramelizes, and that's what makes the onions brown, and you want them really to brown. I should have these both here because you can see all that cooks down to just this tiny little brown bunch down in the bottom here, and these really should be a nice mahogany brown, just like that. And it's amazing to think that so many onions can cook down to such a very small amount. And then, after you have them all nicely cooked, then you're ready to turn them into onion soup. But first, I think it's a good idea, and as most people do, is to put in about 2 tablespoons of flour so that you have a little bit of a liaison, because you don't want the onion soup to be too watery. And that is 2 tablespoons of flour. You want to stir that around and let that cook just briefly. And then in goes your onion soup. Your strained beef stock. I will say that that is now cooked for 2 minutes, and we're going to make 2 quarts of soup here. And then after that flour is cooked, then you put in a bit of your beef stock and stir that all around. And you notice there's some coagulated onion on the side of the pan, and that will all gradually dissolve into the soup. And we're going to make 2 quarts, and I have just about 2 quarts of my homemade beef stock here. And you can see what a nice brown color that is, and that's because the bones were nicely browned. In that all goes. Then you bring that up to the simmer, and then you want to let it simmer for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then the onions and the beef stock all meld and fuse together and make you a perfectly delicious mixture. I have one here that has simmered for the requisite amount of time, and there it is. So that now is really the onion soup. Now you can eat it just as it is, and as a matter of fact, it's extremely good that way. One thing that I forgot to add was, in that other soup, that I always like to add about 2 cups of white wine or dry white vermouth to the soup and let it simmer then, because that gives it added flavor.